Hello and welcome back to my humble show. So I'm going to skip the rest of the intro and get right into tackling today's topic because I have a lot to talk about. I will say that I do hope you like, subscribe, and enjoy the ride. Don't forget to turn on those bell notifications. Yes, this is my cat in my lap. Ain't nobody got time for cat. Goodbye. And hello to you. Let me know in the comments below what you think, what you know. I got some things to go through, some things to share with you. Feel free to disagree with me on anything, but I think I'm being quite reasonable. So yes, a day ago, there was a shooting, an attack on an LDS Church, Grand Blanc, Michigan. It was bad. Here's a headline. 2 more bodies found after Michigan church shooting led to devastating fire, which was set reportedly by the shooter. Death and destruction came in multiple forms Sunday morning at a church in Grand Blanc Township where at least 4 people were killed and 8 others were injured in what authorities are calling an act of targeted violence. So we're going to talk a little bit about the targeting. I actually covered this in a live stream yesterday. It was my first live stream in a while, so I was a bit rusty. Also, only one press conference had taken place at that time by the authorities, and there wasn't a lot of information, definitely not in regards to motive. Now, one might think, because it's an attack on a church, it's therefore a religious motive. Well, that could very well be true, and that's why the White House, Trump on down, are saying it's an attack on Christianity. Then again, considering this is an LDS church, we don't even know for certain that this guy wasn't himself a Christian. So would it be then fair to say that a Christian was attacking Christians? I'm not so sure. Then of course there's the debate over whether or not Mormons are technically Christians, and I'm just saying, people get into the weeds on all of this stuff. I'm not really trying to do that. I'm just trying to call it like I see it. I'm not trying to grift off of any particular narrative. So I see a lot of that happening, whether it's grifting or just people who are so blinded by their own bias that they spin either intentionally or unintentionally every story to fit their predetermined narrative. I waited to speculate about the motive. I didn't speculate about the motive in my live stream yesterday because I didn't want to get it wrong. Now, people on the right began to make their assumptions. People on the left began to make their assumptions, as everyone seems to do these days when a tragic targeted or untargeted attack takes place. So, for example, there were 2 American flags in the back of the guy's truck. The guy being Thomas Jacob Sanford. Yeah, 2 American flags in the back of his truck. So, some people on the left were assuming that because he had American flags, he must therefore be a right-winger, which is honestly kind of a sad assumption. I mean, it's kind of sad that these days here in America, if you have American flags, it's kind of indicative of patriotism or being a member of MAGA even. I mean, there are people who don't even want to wave American flags anymore because they associate that directly with being a Republican, etc., etc. At the same time, there were people on the right who were assuming that because there were American flags in the back of this guy's truck, and because that's such an obvious thing, then it must be like a Fed operation, or it must be some leftist who wants people to think that he's a right-winger. So everyone's just making their assumptions according to their predetermined narratives. And I think that when it comes to murders, especially mass murders of this sort, there are many things to get into. Mental illness is one, especially when the shooter turns out to be a veteran. Like the shooter in North Carolina just the other day, there was PTSD involved in that motive, at least to one degree or another. And I don't mean to make this whole show about my own perspective, but I'm just keeping it real with you. I am someone who is right-leaning. Much more right-leaning than left-leaning, that's for sure. If you've listened to me for any amount of time, you know that with certainty. But at the same time, I recorded a show just the other day about what Republicans get wrong in the murders of Vance Bolter in Minnesota from several months ago. If there's a topic to tackle, I'm going to try to tackle it as fairly and squarely as possible, rather than just going with the predeterminations of my party. Also, if I'm being honest, I'm not much of a partier, politically speaking. Well, both literally and figuratively speaking. It just bothers me that we have to be so opportunistic in society at the expense of those who have had their lives robbed from them. There was this article published just the other day by Axios about this study. The headline read, "Left-wing terrorism outpaces far-right attacks for first time in 30 years." Now, obviously, we've seen certain left-wing attacks all over the news as of late, and there are those on the right who make claims such as violence only comes from the left. And that's just ridiculous. And I'm not saying with absolute certainty that this particular attack in Michigan came from a right-winger. I do think that he's more likely than not, to a certain extent, a member of MAGA was. Does that mean his motive was related to MAGA? Not necessarily. I mean, he wasn't exactly attacking the typical victims of the MAGA movement, if you know what I mean. We're talking about a LDS church. So there's actually evidence to suggest that he believed Mormons were the Antichrist. And we'll get into that. But I have put this thread together with all the information, updates along the way. I'll start with this, posted yesterday by AZ Intel. And actually, this update is not the most recent update because, like I just read a few minutes ago, there have since been a couple more bodies found. But yes, this was, as of yesterday, update on the mass shooting at Grand Blanc, Michigan church. Authorities confirmed that 10 people were shot, 2 killed. 1 person is in critical condition with 7 others in stable condition. The suspect, identified as 40-year-old Thomas Sanford, is deceased. Officials also say an unknown number of individuals remain unaccounted for inside the church. Scrolling on down, this here is worth watching. This is a video from a guy who was actually shot at by the shooter as he was attempting to flee the scene with his family. Yeah, driving away and ultimately escaping the wrath of this crazed lunatic, for lack of more original terminology. Sarah Fields posted this with a quote from this guy on the screen here. This is not something that we should have to be afraid of when we go to worship. I think we can all agree on that much. Yeah. This is a 4-minute long video. His interview was making its rounds yesterday. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. I don't really want to get hung up on playing all of the clips I have shared in this thread. So I'll move on. Burton candidate says he spoke with Grand Blanc church shooter days before deadly attack. This is also worth a watch, I said. So I linked this video from YouTube. And this one we want to check out just for a moment because it references what I referenced about the shooter allegedly believing that Mormons, Latter-day Saints, are equivalent to the Antichrist. So let me just play a couple of minutes of this. I might speed it up a bit. This is an interview by Dave Bondi. It's on his YouTube channel. And he's interviewing this guy, Chris Johns, who is a candidate for city council, I believe, in that area, and claims he had talked to the church shooter just last week.
Hello, everyone. I'm talking to Chris right now, and you contacted me a short time ago, pretty distraught because actually earlier today you came to the realization that you say that you talked to the person who did this horrible thing in Grambling Township.
I did last week. It was Wednesday or Thursday. I'm running for city council and I'm canvassing, and I had an address on my map that I went to, and I came across a gentleman. He was very friendly, and he had interacted positively with me, and we got out of the vehicle. We started just to talk, and after a short while, the conversation went to the Church of Latter-day Saints, Mormonism, and he just made the position multiple times that Mormons are the Antichrist. And he, in not so many terms, said that several times. He gave me his background, but I just walked away from a person who had some very sharp views about Mormons.
Yeah, so you were just out campaigning for the election in November coming up, I'm assuming?
That is correct.
And so you're just shaking hands, looking to meet people. You come across his door. Have you matched it up? Is it the address the same as this person? Have you looked?
It is, yes. I mean, it is not only just the address, but it's also the person that I spoke with. I have a friend in Utah who is involved with the LDS Church. I sent him a voice message saying I had a conversation with a person who had very sharp views, and it's just like you come across a lot of different people while you campaign. Yeah. And I shared this with him on Friday, and then we had our Sunday dinner, and I ended up seeing a photo. That was the exact guy I spoke to last week.
So you saw the guy, and I'm not gonna, the shooter. You saw his picture on the news or on social media, and what was your first reaction?
Shock. I mean, to have just interacted with a person who, again, he had very sharp views. And when we first started speaking, very positive. We just made just general chit chat. And then he went to his background, how he was a Marine. He had served overseas. And again, I'm going to paraphrase because I'm just going from memory, but he, to start new, had moved out to Utah to plow snow. He then began a relationship with a woman who was in the LDS Church. And then the conversation changed to tattoos, which he had a lot of, and how he had to have all his tattoos removed in order to be, in for certain religious ceremonies. And it was just a piece where I was very careful how I answered, because it's one of those things where I did not know what response was going to be acceptable to him. And so it was a case of I just wanted to get off the door and away from him.
Okay, so I think we've played enough of that. This is all checking out, if you ask me. It's all adding up. And thus far, it has not been debunked. I don't think this guy is just blowing smoke here. I think he actually talked to the shooter and, came to the conclusion, because he was told that the guy was anti-LDS to a certain extent. He had experience with the LDS Church, not so positive experience. I guess there are people debating in the comments below this video whether or not you're required to have your tattoos removed if you're joining the LDS Church, things of that nature. But yeah, I would encourage you to check out this full interview if you want to know more about what this guy had to say. But there are people saying that maybe the shooter's motive had to do with health issues of his child, because apparently that was a tough time in that family's life. The guy was also a veteran, so does PTSD come into play? The conclusion, as you'll see by the White House on down, about how it's an attack on Christianity may not necessarily be the best summary. I get that because it's an attack on a church, you would think this is someone who hates Christians more broadly, or Latter-day Saints more specifically in this case. I'm just pointing out that we don't even know for certain that this guy himself was not of some Christian affiliation or another. We definitely don't know for certain that his motive had anything to do with politics, even if he himself was into politics.
What did the FBI director tell you about the shooter? What do we know? What we know at this point in time is that he was a member of this Michigan community, that he is a veteran of our United States Armed Forces. He served in the United States Marine Corps in Iraq. His family is cooperating with the FBI, and so they are currently trying to dig in and get to the bottom of why he committed this heinous act of violence. It's unfathomable. And as the president rightfully put in his Truth Social yesterday, this appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians. And the Trump administration is fully committed to not only investigating these crimes, but prosecuting them to the fullest extent of the law, but also...
Okay, I'm playing that super speed because we already hashed all of this already. You get it. I'm just giving you evidence of the White House summarizing this as an attack on Christianity. Think what you may about that. It is crazy that we live in a world where someone's idea of retaliation or revenge or just general vengeance could be directed towards those whom you would think are the most innocent or the most harmless, or at least in the middle of such a harmless event as a church service, which the victims were in the middle of. Back to this thread, though, continuing on down, a message from Genesee County Sheriff Christopher R. Swanson on the LDS Church shooting. I could pull up this video on Facebook. Let me do that really quick. It's just a short message he posted earlier today.
Sheriff Swanson here. We're back on scene here at McCandless Road. I want you to know throughout the community there's a lot of grief there's some uncertainty. You'll see an increased amount of sheriff patrols around schools that are in session, community buildings that are still meeting. We have places that we're doing grief counseling, but more importantly, I want you to know that you're protected. That while we continue to work through all the different agencies and put this scene back together, that your day-to-day work and your day-to-day operations are very important to us. I want you to think of those victims that have suffered, those families, the church, but more importantly, do your part the best you can, wherever you can. Be kind to somebody, show some love, make a phone call, and be part of that healing process. But you are protected today. I promise you, we will get through this. We will overcome.
He says you are protected today. So in the comments of this video, some are saying we need more sheriffs like him. Others are saying we should be protected every day. Why weren't they protected before this happened? Well, it's impossible to prevent madmen in all cases, but yeah, there are some changes that are going to be made or going to need to be made. Churches, schools, maybe even some laws. That turns into a debate over gun rights and all that. And like I said, I'm a right-leaning individual, so that's a tricky one for me. These are all topics we have to tackle in violent times such as these. Anyways, so I already played the statements from Carolyn Leavitt, Trump's press secretary. No need to replay any of that. Targeted attack, motive. Fox News had posted this with a quote, a statement. I can confirm at this time that the FBI is now leading the investigation and is investigating this as an act of targeted violence. FBI Detroit acting special agent in charge Reuben Coleman discussed how federal officials are handling the Michigan Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints church shooting and fire. And there's a photo of the aftermath. See the truck rammed into the front of the church. We'll talk more about that momentarily. Let me continue on with this thread, though. Getting into some of the claims people have been making in an attempt to vilify their political opponents. I know people have been claiming that Thomas Jake Sanford, had a Stop Trump sign at his house, as seen in a photo too blurry to even read. But if you Google blue Stop Trump sign, this is probably what you're going to find. So this is the photo that was being shared around by people who were claiming there was a Stop Trump sign in front of or at Thomas Sanford's home. Now there is a stop sign in front, a red stop sign. I can make that out. And then there's a sign behind it, which doesn't really seem to line up with the letters Stop Trump. It looks more like this, if you ask me, Trump Vans. But it's somewhat speculative on account of the blurry nature of this photo, and I wouldn't put it past people to intentionally share blurry photos and attempt to mislead people. Like, it's possible that someone is predetermined to believe that this guy was a leftist, so they either take a photo or find a photo, intentionally blur it, and then post it and claim something totally different than what's the reality. I'm not saying that's what happened here. I'm just saying there are people who do that sort of thing, and it's wild. Sometimes it's trolling. Sometimes it's people who are just so blinded by their bias that they believe that's what they're supposed to be doing, twisting and turning everything to fit their narrative, which they'll probably accuse the other side of doing, only to do themselves. What else do we have here? Yeah, I had reposted this post from Lucre Fund. He said, Grand Blank Michigan Mormon church shooter and arsonist is Iraq war vet Thomas Jake Sanford, Jacob, sometimes known as Jake, who killed two plus and has a Stop Trump sign at his house and there's the address. And it just blows my mind how people could so quickly, assuming they're genuine in their interpretations, interpret this as a Stop Trump sign. Now there's a stop sign and then a sign behind it that says something which looks more like Trump Vance, if you ask me, but I can't even say that with certainty. But yes, this is the guy. Thomas Sanford. So people were also sharing political contribution, political donation records from Thomas J. Sanford and saying that it was the same Thomas J. Sanford. Well, there's more than one in the world. A couple more things here worth noting. Yeah, the stop sign, the word stop would have to be significantly stretched out to be so much wider than Trump on that blue sign. Anybody else notice that? Let me pull this up one more time. Notice how much wider the top word is than the bottom word, but we're supposed to believe that that makes out the word stop, and that makes out the word Trump. I feel like that would be a very visually unappealing sign. Anyways, I'm just trying to exercise some common sense here. This is takeaway number 1 here. Prioritizing of mental health care for our veterans. Yeah, so this was a good, fair and balanced post from Carmine Sabia. Not sure who he is, but I agree with him on this. 2 mass shooters, both are white male veterans. Thomas Jacob Sanford and Nigel Edge, the shooter from North Carolina. That's worth a show of its own because there's a lot of personal history to talk about there with this veteran and his apparent PTSD. This man on the right here. So not certain what their political affiliations are, although I don't think it's necessarily relevant here, but it concerns me regarding mental health care for our veterans. So the man on the right supposedly believed that LGBTQ white supremacist groups were attempting to kill him, and he ultimately murdered several people at a diner of sorts in North Carolina, shooting them from a boat. And this here, obviously, is Thomas Sanford. The face of his child has been blurred, understandably, but yeah, it concerns me regarding healthcare for our veterans as well. The mental health care, that is. So, back to the online claims people have been spreading around in an attempt to vilify their political opponents. People on the right need to stop being so predetermined that violence only happens by the hands of the left. Example: claiming this politically active Democrat socialist progressive Thomas J. Sanford is the LDS Church Shooter in Grand Blanc, even though this guy looks nothing like him, is from a different state, and literally posted to his Blue Sky account 16 hours ago, after the shooter was deceased. So yes, there were a bunch of people claiming that this guy, this Thomas J. Sanford, was the shooter. And he posted since the shooting on his Blue Sky account saying, "On the advice of the FBI, my Facebook profile is frozen for the next few days." This was someone who has an X account. You can find it. He hasn't posted on it in a long time, but people were sharing screenshots of his bio where he says that he's a politically active Democrat, socialist, progressive, and a proud union member. They were saying this is the guy. I guess someone informed him that he was being eaten alive on social media, and yeah, that's why I posted to Blue Sky. Not that I'd recommend using Blue Sky. So this is a profile photo of him. Looks nothing like this guy. Yet people were falling for it. Hook, line, and sinker. As you can see here, this guy, Svilin Georgiev, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce these names, said, "When Democrat leaders label churches as hate organizations, it's only a matter of time before their followers go and burn churches down, killing people. Thomas Jacob Sanford is the example. He shot at church and injured many, there's a typo there, more, then burned the church down. Thomas is a hardcore Democrat progressive. He shares the screenshot and then these donation records, but the guy is not even from the same state. He's totally different guy, obviously. But we won't linger on that anymore. So the fakery goes both ways. Here we see, similar to the fake Tyler Robinson MAGA shirt, trolls, ? Have given Thomas Sanford a fake shirt. So here's the example of the fakery which was being fomented after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The real shirt on the left, the fake shirt on the right. Obviously a Photoshop job, though poorly done. And here we have some reverse psychology. So this, whoever put this together said, this is the fake shirt, and this is the real shirt. Now it is worth noting that the first thing which catches my eye is how much more blurry this photo is than this one. Doesn't necessarily prove anything, but I do wonder if it was intentionally blurred to hide how poorly it was photoshopped. Because there were people claiming, as is suggested in the caption here, that the shirt on the right, the Trump shirt, the Make Liberals Cry Again shirt, is the Photoshop. And the shirt on the left is the real shirt. But not the case. And I'll show you my evidence of that. If you saw the photos above and were understandably confused, see the original photo of Thomas Sanford, not Stanford, I have a typo there, wearing the Make Liberals Cry Again shirt. To be fair, the photo was posted 6 years ago, so his political views may have since changed. But yes, here's the original photo posted 6 years ago to this account, unless it has since been taken down because of the publicity. September 12, 2019. Okay, so if this shirt here is the fake one, and it was photoshopped a day ago, how has it existed on Facebook for the past 6 years? Obviously, people are either trolling or something else. I don't know. I don't know what people's motives are. So, note to everyone. I don't have anything against the quartering, Jeremy, from YouTube and other social media platforms, but the dude just says stuff sometimes with no factual basis. If you don't actually know something to be true, then shut up instead of mindlessly claiming it's true. I mean, that's his own advice, but he himself applies it selectively. He's the type to see a Stop Trump claim going around, believe it blindly, then use it to prove what he has already predetermined. So he posted this shortly after the attack yesterday. He said, "The American flags on the church shooter's truck is maybe the most obvious OP in history. I bet they still had folds in them." This will end up being a lefty trying to frame the right. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this is a narrative which people on the right were pushing. If there's anything suggesting that a shooter is actually a lefty, they say, definitely a lefty. If there's anything suggesting that the shooter is a righty, they say, oh, the fact that there's something suggesting this shooter is a righty actually proves that he's a lefty. Because it's an op. So that's how people who just never want to take the L think. They twist and turn everything. But here, Jeremy, the quartering, was literally a day ago saying, hot take, if you are legitimately proposing anything but the radical left assassinating Charlie Kirk, you are willingly or unwillingly running cover for them. Enjoy the clicks. So when it comes to Charlie Kirk, he cannot handle the conspiracy theories that people are putting out there. But then when it comes to what happened just yesterday in Michigan, he himself is spreading conspiracy theories. Oh my goodness. Big ol' facepalm right there. I used to watch a lot of Jeremy's content, but he falls for these sorts of things so much that I can't handle a regular dose of his content anymore. Even Grok seemed to be confused about the shooter's truck. People were screenshotting Grok's response and using it to make false claims. So yeah, there was this response by Grok to someone. Grok is usually pretty reliable, but it has some glitches in its system, if you know what I mean. The image of the white truck with flags is being shared on X in connection with today's Grand Blanc church shooting, but it appears to originate from a June 2025 incident at a church in Wayne, Michigan, where a truck was used to stop a gunman. Major news reports on today's event don't mention such a vehicle. This is a developing story. Details may change, so maybe people were just misinterpreting this, but I saw where some people were sharing that statement with pictures of this truck and saying, see, this is not actually a photo of what happened in Michigan yesterday. This is a photo of something that happened months ago. Okay, this is what happened months ago right here. Police say a man opened fire outside a Michigan church before staff fatally shot him. Article from June 22 of this year. Different truck. No flags in the back. So maybe it's just that the way Grok's response was worded was a bit weird. Regardless, some people were using it to claim that this here was not actually from yesterday, when in fact it was. You see the church burning down as the photos are being taken. Yeah, not exactly a white truck by the looks of it. Okay, here's a reasonable article, but they still struggle to spell Thomas Sanford's name correctly consistently. I can't knock them on that too much. I spelled it incorrectly further up in the thread myself. So let me just breeze through this article. I also have one more article pulled up down here where I say more info on whether or not Thomas Sanford was a Trump supporter for those who get a high off of claiming that violence has come from their political opponents. To which someone replied to me saying, he was a Trumper and you're a disingenuous moron. What? So my response was, where did I say he wasn't, you nincompoop? Did you not see the rest of my entirely reasonable thread? My sentiment in this particular post applies to people on both sides who jump to conclusions like you just did. Yeah, and someone else said to me, it's hilarious watching all of you pretend he isn't a deranged MAGA. And again, I responded, you missed the entire point of my entire thread. I never asserted that he wasn't MAGA, but I'm glad that my caption here applied to you perfectly. So, these are clearly people on the left who see a reasonable person on the right, and it's not good enough for them because of how unreasonable they are, clearly. But yes, as for these two aforementioned articles, let me just go through them quickly and then wrap this show up. Got to do some trimming. Here from the Economic Times, Michigan church shooting suspect Thomas Jacob Sanford's emotional Facebook post on his child's illness surfaces. Thomas Jacob Sanford, a 40-year-old former Marine, killed 4 and wounded 8 in a Michigan church shooting, setting the building ablaze before being shot dead by police. The attack came amidst his family's severe financial and emotional strain from his young son's rare genetic disorder, which required extensive medical care. Don't know if it contributed to his motive in the attack, though, obviously. As many as 4 people were killed and 8 others were wounded in a mass shooting at a chapel of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, Michigan. So on and so forth. No need to keep reading the same information over and over, but social media accounts linked to Sanford's family show that he was married with at least one child, a young son. According to a GoFundMe page from 2015, the family was in need of donations to help pay for the medical care of Sanford's son, who was born with a rare genetic disorder. Keep in mind that's 10 years ago, but these things are not generally short-lived. The newborn was diagnosed with congenital hyperinsulinism, a serious condition that necessitated an extended hospital stay and multiple surgeries to remove parts of the pancreas, according to updates shared on the family's Facebook page detailing their challenging journey. The child's illness also placed a financial strain on the family. A local news report noted that Sanford took leave from his job as a Coca-Cola truck driver to care for his son. "Don't ever take having healthy kids for granted," Sanford is quoted as saying in another article. "We are proud of our child. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps and was in Iraq, and this is still the most unique thing to deal with." Wow. Who is Thomas Jacob Sanford? 40-year suspect was a former U.S. Marine from Burton, Michigan, who served in the military from 2004 to 2008, including in Iraq during the U.S. occupation of the Middle Eastern country. A Marine spokesperson told CNN that Thomas Jacob Sanford served as sergeant and received several medals for his service, which lasted from 2004 to 2008. He was deployed during Operation Iraqi Freedom for several months, starting in the summer of 2007. Thomas Jacob Sanford graduated from Goodrich High School in 2004 and was recognized among other veteran alumni, according to an archived page from the school's website. He earned several awards during his 4 years of service, including the Marine Corps Good Conduct Medal, Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, Iraq Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, and the National Defense Service Medal. So this guy, despite the heinous act of violence in the end, was a patriot. He served his country. Something went wrong in his mind at some point in time, or who knows what. According to Fox News, Thomas Jacob Sanford left with the rank of sergeant, and his last duty assignment was with the 2D Maintenance Battalion, a Combat Logistics Regiment 25, 2D Marine Logistics Group, and at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Probably mispronouncing that. My apologies. Thomas Jacob rammed a Chevy Silverado truck into a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township, Michigan, before opening fire on the hundreds of worshipers gathered there, authorities said. Sanford then allegedly set the building on fire before being killed by responding officers. Police said they believe Sanford used an accelerant, likely gasoline, to start the fire. Social media posts also suggest Sanford was passionate about hunting and fishing, with photos showing him in camouflage alongside deer and displaying his catch from ice fishing trips. Yeah, there were reports early on about an IED in his truck, maybe explosive. I know his home was being searched by the authorities. I don't know what the latest on all of that is. I'm sure the investigation will continue, and maybe it will continue to reveal more information. If so, I'll cover it. But for now, I'm just trying to tell it like it is. Was LDS shooting suspect Thomas Sanford a Trump supporter? What we know. This is according to Newsweek. The context. Sanford drove a vehicle into a church in Grand Blanc, opened fire, yada yada yada, bing bang boom. I can skip all of that. I can skip all of this. It also comes against the backdrop of high tensions across America and fears around political violence in the aftermath of the shooting of Charlie Kirk. So far, authorities have not provided a motive for the attack, and Michigan State Police said during a Sunday night press conference that speculation about Sanford's motives are exactly what it is, a speculation, and that we won't come to those kinds of conclusions for some time. However, some people are jumping to the conclusion that Sanford was a Trump supporter based on what they have found online. Social media accounts linked to Sanford's family show that he was married with a young son who had a rare genetic disorder. Social media posts show that Sanford was referred to as Jake rather than Thomas. Public records show that Sanford had no party affiliation. However, in one social media post, dated September of 2019, Sanford is seen wearing a Trump 2020 t-shirt. which had the text "Make Liberals Cry Again" on it. As we saw in the photo I pulled up from Facebook. Is it possible that that was a joke? Yeah, it's possible. I doubt it. Let me go back and look at some comments under this post. There are no old comments, as far as I can see, interpreting this as a joke. So I don't think he was wearing this shirt just as a joke for the sake of the photo shoot. And if he was, it certainly was not referenced in this entirely serious caption at the top of the post or in any of the comments below the post, other than what people have posted in the last day. As I see someone saying, not a liberal, not a trans, not a gay, and not a POC, but a low IQ'd maggot. Color me surprised. Pointing finger, clown face. Okay. Keep that same energy. If he had been a leftist, you wouldn't be saying anything. You'd be ignoring the story. Probably still trying to spin it to blame MAGA somehow, some way. But either way, that sort of pathetic partisanship perturbs me, to say the least. Records also show that Sanford lived in a house on the 4100 block of East Atherton Road in Burton, Michigan. A Google Maps image from June of 2025 shows a Trump sign outside of the suspect's home. The sign has been reported by multiple outlets and has been fueling social media speculation about Sanford's political beliefs. So that's a Google Maps image. I wondered if it was. That's why it's so blurry. And this article asserts that it was a Trump sign, not a Stop Trump sign. I believe the former is true there. It looks like a Trump Vance sign to me. Maybe even a Trump Pence sign. It could also be a Trump Pence sign. Didn't even think about that earlier. Some people leave their signs up for years. Google Maps image from June of 2025. So if it is a Trump Pence sign, it has been up for a long time. Sometimes Google Maps doesn't have the most updated images. That's why I was checking the date of the image. However, it wouldn't be the first time two people living in the same house turn out to have differing political views. Yeah, that's also possible. It's possible that someone else in his family put the sign up, which still wouldn't explain why he himself is wearing this Trump shirt with the words "Make Liberals Cry Again" on it. Here's a post from Tella Sanford. Hashtag bring Trump back. Hashtag who voted for this. So more context. In a Facebook post dated May 12 of 2021, a while ago, Sanford's wife, Tella Sanford, shared a link accompanied by the hashtags bring Trump back and who voted for this. The linked content has been deleted. Who knows what the linked content was? But the hashtags kind of speak for themselves, or at least the one does. Sanford was an Iraq war veteran, according to a report from CNN. More information about his service, his hobby of hunting. Though the combination of these details have fueled speculation that Sanford is a Trump supporter, none of this is proof as to what his political leanings may have been. What people are saying, Donald Trump on Truth Social, I believe I read that in my live stream yesterday. He called it an attack on Christians. Statement from Pam Bondi, I read that yesterday. Statement from Kash Patel, I read that yesterday. The FBI will lead the federal investigation while providing support to state and local officials. Given the current state of political polarization in the United States, potential details along with theories are likely to be used by some people online to further or justify their own agendas. Perfectly reasonable article. Come to your own conclusion. Don't just jump to conclusions, though. I gotta go. I think I've spent enough time on this. Be happy to hear from you. Keep in touch, keep in tune. New content is coming soon. Peace.